video. I'm just taking the Kona out for a drive. I'm down to my last couple of journeys on a test that I'm doing, trying to run the car down to almost zero. Not just doing a range test, but I'm measuring the number of kilowatt hours that I'm using up from a full charge all the way down to zero to try and see how big the battery really is. And based on that measurement, I should be able to tell whether there's any degradation of the battery in the 18,700 miles that I've done so far in my Kona Electric. So that's what I'm out for the drive, you know, that's what I'm using the drive for. But today's video was, I think I labelled it up, Kona Electric goes EV shopping. And basically yesterday I went out and had a look at a Renault dealership and the Renault Zoe ZE50, and I also had a look at the new Mini Electric as well. And there's a few things about the trip out to the dealers that surprised me, so I thought I would share that information with you. Now it's really difficult to try and describe it all, so I'm probably going to break it down and do like the test drives separately, etc. So just to give you in this video the first impression that I've seen of both the dealership and then of the car specifications and which one specification level that I'm interested in. So the first dealership that I went to was the Inchcape dealership, mini dealership in Norwich, Norfolk, and it was, I don't know what I was expecting because of the COVID-19 stuff. So they've all got protection policies in place, but you'd expect them to be similar and you'd expect them to be orientated towards still trying to sell a car. But anyway, the BMW Mini dealership, basically I wasn't allowed in the dealership. I had to ring a bell on the outside and someone came to the door, I think that was the receptionist, to say, hello, what do you want? And you know, it was a nice enough welcome, but it was me stood outside, not allowed in. And that compared to just the Renault dealership, where they had all the notices telling you what their policy and procedures were, but you walked in the door and then stood at a sign inside their building waiting to be seen by the receptionist. The receptionist, again, didn't have to come over, but just said to me, hello, how can we help? So similar, but slightly different as well. Mini not letting you into the building, Renault welcoming you into the building, but then giving you the same greeting. And these sort of small differences carried on throughout the experience. In the Mini dealership, the lady on reception basically said, okay, do you have an appointment? The answer was no, I don't, I'm a walk-in. So she said, I'll call up and ask for a salesman to come down. And, well, there's a difference to start with, isn't there? You know, car dealerships normally have their salesmen on the sales floor with the cars, hunting and prowling for the customer to come in so they can grab you. But no, they were all hidden away in offices. And I had to stand there quite a while waiting for this guy to come down to see me, because I had said I was interested in the Mini Electric, and the receptionist did say I was a new customer without an appointment coming to talk about the Mini Electric. Anyway, going back to the Renault dealership, well, the experience was very different, because at the same time that I was being welcomed into the building by the receptionist, a sales manager on the floor came over immediately, determined that I didn't have an appointment, apologised that he had an appointment in the next 2 or 3 minutes, so couldn't help me himself, but he then walked me over and introduced me to a younger sales manager who was available. So it was more instantaneous, more personal, and just more positive. It's unusual that this growing sensation and feeling of, I don't know, I mean, I'll give you the outcome of the meeting straight away. Basically, the Mini dealership, everything seemed to point towards no, and you can't do this, and we don't really want to sell you the car. Whereas the Renault dealership, everything was a positive feeling, a yes feeling, and very definitely they wanted to sell me a car. And the experience with the BMW one, there's nothing wrong with it. It was subtle, but it was enough just to tell that I wasn't really being made feel welcome for some reason. And you know, that could just be me, of course, or it could just be the salesman, but you know, what can I say? I can only tell you what I experienced. The guy that came down from the BMW dealership to talk to me knew that I was interested in the Mini, but didn't bring the keys down to have a look inside the one Mini Electric that they had in the showroom. In fact, all the cars were locked, you can't get into any of them, and they don't want you to touch any of them. So he had to go back upstairs to get the keys and to put his safety gloves on so that he could touch the car and open it. And this again was very different to the Renault dealership, that the BMW Mini dealers thoughts and ideas was customers shouldn't touch it because then they don't have to re-sanitize the car for the next customer that wants to come along and have a look at it, which is, you know, all well and good, I suppose, but you're going to have kids in the showroom and they're going to be touching the cars anyway, so really they ought to be doing a touch surface wipe down through every customer interaction anyway. So it was a little bit odd that I wasn't allowed in the car. I couldn't actually sit in the Mini Electric. I could poke my head through the door and have a look on the inside, but I couldn't actually see the car. You know, actually sit in the car and have a little feel for it or touch anything. The Renault dealership, again, very different. They had two cars available, two different specifications, and they opened the car up for me, helped myself, just like normal. I can get in, I can touch what I want. You know, I did ask and was happy to comply with whatever they wanted, but it was more freedom, more, well, of course it's not difficult, you know, we'll just wipe it down afterwards and re-sanitize. It's not a problem. Then we move on to talking about the interiors. One of the things that's important to me in helping me decide which model I want to go for is the look and the feel of the fabrics and the seats. I don't really like, shall we say, the basic level seats. If you remember what a Ford Fiesta Finesse might be like, you know, it had more of a bench type seat and a very flat seat, where I used to prefer going for a more sporty car. In the Renault, for example, I've had a couple of Clios. I used to go for the Ioniq range, which had slightly more sporty seats. You know, not top of the range, but still they had side bolsters and a bit of support. I think it even had lumbar support. So that's the sort of seat that I prefer. In the Mini dealership, when I asked what interior they had, the car on display was a level 2, and I really liked the look of that interior. Very, very nice. So I asked, what about the level 1? I already know what the level 3 specification is like because we happen to have a Mini already, and it's got the same seating interior as the level 3 Mini, so I know what that's like. So I wanted to know what the level 1 was like, and he showed me a picture on the brochure, and basically it was so small I'd have to use a magnifying glass to try and work out what real colour it was, let alone what the actual texture was. So he didn't seem to understand what I was trying to say, that I wanted to know what the shape of the seat was and what the type of fabric felt like. So having re-explained that to him, he wandered around the showroom with me trying to find something similar, and happened to find a Mini that had, he thinks, similar shaped seats, and he described it to me as the level 1 comes with, shall we say, the chili pack option for the Cooper car in the prior models of Mini. So that made sense to me. I understood what sort of seat that was. It was a slightly sporty seat, an upgraded seat, not a flat one, and it was just a pure cloth material, not a mixed fabric type. So the more models you go up, the more mixed fabric you have and the more leather you get. So again, that made sense, but it was quite hard work getting that out of the guy. Where in the Renault dealership, they took me out to the two cars and showed me the two types of interior, one being part leather and one being all material. And to my surprise, I actually felt more comfortable sitting on the seat which was the cheaper seat, the Ioniq range car, rather than the part leather one. And slightly to my surprise, they were quite flat bench type seats. I thought I'd seen a review recently by somebody reviewing the ZE50 saying it had quite good side bolster support. Well, I'm not sure if that's a different car then, because on the GT line and the Ioniq that I had a look at, they both seemed quite flat. Anyway, job done, much simpler in the Renault dealership. I determined that both seats were the same shape in the Zoe. One just was a light grey pure cloth, and one was the similar sort of cloth with part leather as well. So not actually much to choose between them, and if I'm honest, the Zoe part leather really looked like PVC. It wasn't a good imitation leather at all. When you compare it to the Mini inside looked like proper leather on the half leather, half cloth interior. So it's starting to build up a theme here that the Mini is awkward as a dealership experience, trying to get the information out of the guy and trying to find out what I want, but the actual Mini product on the interior is appealing to me more than the Zoe ZE50 interior, even though the dealership experience and the salesman is so much easier to work with, so much more positive, and I can get all of the information I want straight away. And that carries on again when I talk about test drives. I talked to the Renault dealership and they're quite happy to arrange a test drive for me. I ask how long I need to give notice for them so they can sanitize the car, etc. And that's just a couple no problems, no issues, and they're extremely flexible as to how I take the test drive and how long I have the test drive for. So everything's positive, everything's yes, we can do this, we want to get you in a car, and we want to sell you a car. The Mini dealership again says, oh no, you can't have a test drive, sir, definitely not today. And we only allow them out for an hour, and you have to book them in advance. And it was just a long list of things that they couldn't possibly do, because re-sanitising the car is far too difficult for them and time consuming, and because of the time constraints and all of this, that's why we can only have it for an hour if we pre-book. So again, there's a very, very common theme coming through, that it's the process and procedure in the BMW Mini dealership is more important to them than selling a car. Yes, I know it's COVID-19 and they need to take everything safely, but as I said to the guy, what I want is a 3-hour minimum test drive, and if you don't offer that, well, I can't test the car and I can't obviously consider buying it, but I'm quite flexible on time. So what I'm happy to say is I would like a 3-hour slot. You don't have to sanitise it multiple times, you'll only have to sanitise it the once. So when you have a 3-hour slot available, because it's not going to be an accompanied drive anyway because of the new procedures, so it doesn't take a salesman the 3 hours. When the car's not booked out to another customer, on whatever day they like and whatever time of the day they like, let me know and I'll take the car for the test drive then, so it doesn't inconvenience them. To me that sounds reasonable, because I'm keeping within their rules, I'm not causing them any inconvenience, but of course it's not what they want to do. They only want 1-hour slots. And the guy sort of looks gone out at me as if, what on earth are you doing asking for something that's not part of our procedure? I can't do that. He's going to have to go and ask for permission above to see whether I can have a test drive under my terms. So I've walked away from the dealership and I don't know if I can have a test drive. He hasn't told me. He's going to come back to me via email. And then lastly, the final piece of the puzzle is with the Renault dealership. I walked out with 2 quotations, one to buy the Ioniq ZE50 and one to buy the GT line, and information on whether to get the GT line by September, end of September registration. So it's like a pre-registered car, and they would give a fantastic deal on, and a factory build. So I walked away with all that information, including a trade-in value for my car. So brilliant, I knew which car I was interested in, had all the information, I even had the trade-in quotes and the prices for the different variations of how to buy it. The Mini dealership, nothing. I don't have a number for the trade-in of my car. I actually asked them for the trade-in value of 2 cars, both the Mini we have and the Kona Electric, basically just to gauge what sort of value that they're prepared to offer for different types of car. And the only prices I was given was a brochure that was actually out of date, because it didn't include the correct value for the new scheme from the government, where they give us a discount on the car. It's been reduced from 3,500, the grant that the government gives you, to down to 3,000. So their prices on their brochures were £500 out. So again, just a little bit bad that they don't have up-to-date information. Whereas, the Renault dealership, everything's spot on, everything's to the penny worked out, and I've got precise quotations. And the final nail in the coffin, which just makes me really question whether I was having a Pretty Woman moment with the BMW dealership, because I was in my scruffs. Maybe I just didn't look like a BMW Mini customer, so maybe they weren't taking me seriously, despite being sat in a car that new today has a list price of over £40,000. It's a bit of a mystery to me as to what was going on and why I was getting this very negative vibe from the Mini dealership. So yeah, this final detail was basically, as a customer, I would want to know when I could get one of these cars. So of course I asked if I ordered one, how long would it take to get one? And the BMW dealership, the Mini dealership, told me that they have one stage 2 or level 2 car available in stock in the country, and that was a cancelled order in Moonstone Grey. So, fair enough, they're popular, they're going out to customers, they don't have much stock, and they only have one available, so it's a factory order. The Renault dealership, well, they apparently have got quite a lot of stock and they can access quite a few, so I'd have a colour choice, a model choice, and I could have some of those almost immediately. They were talking about the best deal being one that was registered basically by the 30th of September, so September time, I could have a new ZE50 in the colour choice and spec of what I wanted, and that was the best way to get the best deal. The Mini dealership, they're all factory orders, and there's nothing wrong with that on its own, but the guy kept saying factory order dates, their build slots, and I explained to him, well, yeah, that's his term, that's fine for him to understand, but I need to understand how that interprets to a delivery date. And trying to get this guy to give me any clue whatsoever as to what delivery date might look like, not a specific date, I don't need a specific date, but that's what he kept referring to, that he can't give me a delivery date because it could change. So I had to really push him to say, well, how long is it typically between a build date and a delivery slot to the dealership? How long is it normally? And even that was difficult for him to answer. He said, oh, but this is the electric model and they're not making as many of those. They're making more of the petrol ones. So, it's different as to how long it takes. And it doesn't matter how much I pushed the guy, he would not tell me if I had a build slot in October this year, whether I could expect it in October, November or March the next year. It was just all very, very difficult. Whereas the Renault dealership were completely different. The build slot was October, and no doubt I would get it by November at the latest if it was built. So they understand their build process more, they understand how long it takes. Clearly this single guy or the Mini dealership just aren't that experienced yet at selling Mini electrics, and maybe it's just they're filling the back orders. So am I going mad? Am I just biased in some way? Because I have actually bought a couple of Clios from Renault before, including one from that particular dealer. Is it just me? Or is there something going on that the Mini dealership, or this one particular, just doesn't really want to sell me a car? It's a very, very unusual vibe. I'm getting the feeling that they do not want to sell me a car. Now, whether they just expect their customers to walk in with a wad of money and wave it and say, here, take my money and I'll have a Mini, whatever you'd like to give me. I don't know what their expectation is, but it's not how I would expect to buy a car. I would expect them to not fawn over me, but pay me some attention and take me seriously and give me all the information very quickly and very easily to make the process simple to sell me a car. So anyway, let me know in the comments below, what have you experienced the differences between, let's say, Mini, if you've been to look at buying a Mini, and Renault. Car-wise, between the two, the thing that I can say up front is I'm now potentially interested in a level 1 specification Mini, and the only thing extra I'd like in there is the winter pack of the heated seats and the upgraded alloy wheels, which they don't actually offer on the level 1. So maybe I'd creep up to the level 2, because it's only £2,000 difference between the level 1 and level 2 specification. And the seat interior, I like both of them. They're both very high quality, so I'd be happy with either of those. The level 3 specification between the level 1 and level 3, that's a £6,000 difference, and basically to get all the toys that come with it and the full leather, to me it's just not worth it. For the extra you get and for the £6,000, I don't think there's a match between it. For example, with the Kona Electric, when I bought this, the difference between the Premium and the Premium SE was only £3,500. So that was acceptable to upgrade, but not £6,000. In the Zoe, the differences were very, very different. The Ioniq felt a little bit cheap and nasty interior to me. It looked more plasticky and cheap. The media display was much smaller, and the seats were, they did look like an entry-level basic car seat for a little city car. They didn't look very high quality like the Mini interior is. But the GT line with the bigger display, the media display, that's an option pack in the Ioniq at £800. But the GT line car is only £2,000 difference from the Ioniq. So if you add the media pack in, there's only £1,200 difference between the Ioniq and the GT line. So in my mind, for all the extra sensors and rear facing camera and all those sort of things, I'd probably go for the GT line in the ZE50, because it just makes sense for the options versus the price differential. So it's very interesting to see in the Mini, I would be happy with the entry-level car, and the pricing points me towards the entry-level car at £25,000 after the UK grant, whereas the Renault ZE50 are more attracted to the GT line, which is an unbelievable £35,000 or more list price before any options, and the winter pack is an option as well. And after their discount and the government grant, I could get that car for £28,500 if registered by the end of September. So very interesting that the Zoe ZE50 is a more expensive car to buy in the spec I would be interested in at £28,500 to the Mini at £25,000. Now, yeah, I know what you're going to say. You're going to say, well, of course, you know, the Zoe's got a bigger battery and that bigger range, and that makes it a more expensive car. But there's something odd going on when you look at the pricing between the two. If you forget about the battery and how far the range is, how big the fuel tank is, the Mini is a higher quality car. It really is. It's more classy. The interior finish is just much higher quality. It's got more prestige to it. So if you look at the petrol versions, yeah, the Minis are more expensive. So for less money, I can get a more prestigious car, a more higher quality car. So it's really quite odd that the Zoe seems like a lesser quality finished car, but I have to pay more money for it just because of the battery. And this could be a really good winning point for the Mini, that it looks cheap. Even though it's more expensive than the petrol derivative, it looks cheap by comparison to other electric cars. And for the Zoe ZE50, well, 2 years ago when I looked at buying this Kona Electric, I did test the Zoe, and I got a quote for buying a Signature, the top of the range, ZE40, so not a battery lease, just buying outright. And I could buy it for, I think it was £19,500. I'd have to go back to my old video that I did to see exactly what the price was, but from memory it was about £19,500. And if I got it through one of the finance deals, then they'd give an extra contribution, and it was only something like £18,500 or £18,750. So amazingly, this Zoe ZE50 is 10 grand, £10,000 more than the top of the range Zoe ZE40 was 2 years ago. So what do I get for my £10,000? Yes, there's a few more safety features, there's a few more tech features in it, and I get 10 kilowatt hours roughly more battery, so more range. But 2 years on, they should be building those cars cheaper. The batteries should be cheaper. And yet it's... That wasn't 30 miles an hour by the Porsche that was going down the road. Yeah, anyway, you know, £10,000, where has that extra money come from? It seems as though all EVs have just gone up in price, but with the Zoe particularly, I can't justify the £10,000 difference from 2 years ago till now. The car isn't that much better. The interior retrim, you know, it is better. The doors opened and shut and closed a little bit more solidly, and much better than the one that I tested 2 years ago, but it wasn't that drastically improved over the old car. So 10 grand more? I don't think so. I don't think it's worth it. Whereas the Mini, for £25,000, is a higher quality product. It is worth it for the car, but the only doubt and question is because of the small battery and how little range it's got, as to how actually practical it is. So a very interesting comparison between the two. You know, the cars maybe are intended for different types of people. You know, maybe the average Mini buyer is the same as the owner of the Mini that we've actually got. She was based in Kensington. The car in 3 years had done 5,000 miles. It was basically a handbag, a shopping car. So it was hardly used, just looked very, very pretty with a very good specification. Maybe that's the sort of customer Mini are expecting. Whereas the Renault dealerships and the ZE50, they're expecting their cars to be used more as a workhorse, aren't they? Anyway, there you go. I've arrived at my destination now, so I'll finish off, and hopefully this won't be too long a video. But I just found the comparison between the two and the experience between the two, both on the car and what my opinion of the car was, just by looking at a picture, the specification, and having a sit in the car was. I mean, I like the Zoe ZE50, and for the right deal and the right price, It's a lot of electric car. I would be quite happy to have it, but I actually like the look of and like the feel of the seats, because I was able to actually touch the seat, just not sit on it. But I know how comfortable a Mini is. I think I'd actually prefer the Mini as a product. So it'd be really interesting to see now whether I get an email eventually about a test drive in the Mini, or whether they actually make me an offer to actually buy one of the cars. I'm told that he'll send me an email through, but you know, I'm now on the day after that visit. It's getting near 11 o'clock and I haven't had anything yet. So yeah, it's going to be very interesting to see the difference between the two and how long it takes to get a test drive and what I actually think of the cars when I'm driving it. Hope this was of interest to you. I hope it's not too moany towards the Mini, because I guess I'm just getting a bad vibe from the dealership, whereas I'm getting a very good vibe on the product. Whereas the Renault Zoe ZE50, I'm getting a better vibe from the dealership than I did the actual car. So there you go. I'll follow up with some more videos with the test drives and then ultimately what I choose to do thereafter. Thanks for listening, thanks for watching, and take care. See you again soon. Bye for now.